Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the language video number one, where our language is distributed. And before we get to talking about the actual content here, I want to discuss with you how to set up your notes. These are the key concepts or questions that we will be covering in this video. And this is how you should have your notes page set up. So you can do this as you write, or you can set it up before you listen to the lecture. However, it does need to be structured like this. So your title should be AP Human Geo or APHG, language number one, and you should put down today's date. The next thing that you should do is in every one of these videos, there will be key concepts introduced at the beginning, and this is kind of like your roadmap for the lecture. So each one of these key concepts or questions should be a header on your notes. And if you need to, I suggest highlighting this heading in a specific color so you can visually see where the topics are arranged on your page. And so we're going to talk about how our language is classified, where our language is distributed, and what are the major languages of the world. So if you need to pause and set up your notes for a second, you should do so right now. So before we talk about our first question, I want to talk about why do we even care about language? So this is kind of like a context before we get started. I do suggest that you write it down though. We care about language because it is the basis of our identity as human beings. It's used for communication, but communication is what helps us create our identity. So people are really bound together by language. It is also really the heart of our culture. It allows one generation to the next to transmit their values and belief systems, their wisdom. It holds people together. Obviously, it is also important because it is how we speak and communicate with each other, but do not forget that language is important, written language is important as well, and that's how a lot of people communicate throughout generations too. Lastly is that there is a huge impact on our cultural landscape, so the things that we see around us every day based on our language. And so a lot of times you can identify where you are in the world based on the languages that you are seeing around you. So as of now, a lot of geographers are kind of split on this. They say there are over 6,000 living languages on our planet right now. And this number varies all the time, and some people say it's up to 7,000 living languages. So that's a ton, right? But it's important for you to know that a lot of places are really linguistically diverse. So Africa is one of the most linguistically diverse continents. And so you can see here the different colors indicate different regions of language. Asia is also a very linguistically diverse place. So in Papua New Guinea, there are actually over 900 languages that are spoken in that country in the present day. And India has over 800 languages spoken within its borders. So, you know, language is really essential for understanding spatial patterns. So how do humans interact with each other? What are their common histories? Who have they spoken to? Who have they written to? And what have societies learned from each other over time? And that kind of leads us to acknowledge that a lot of small languages are endangered. And so just like animals become endangered, languages do as well. And geographers estimate that one language dies every 2 weeks. So a lot of languages are going extinct in our world. Okay, so with that kind of knowledge, let's start on our content. How are languages classified? And so this is kind of just like how are languages broken down. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this particular slide. But I do need you to know kind of an official language is a language used by the government of a country for its official documents. So things like laws, road signs, money, stamps, etc. But what I am going to have you focus on are these three terms right here. These are very important, and we're going to work with these a lot. And so a language family is a collection of languages that are related through an ancestor that happened long, long before recorded history, so thousands and thousands of years ago. It is the largest size of classification. Language branches are kind of like a step down from a family, and so it's a bit smaller than a family, and it is a collection of languages within a family that existed several thousand years ago. And then a language group is something that is much more recent, and it is the collection of languages, which is even smaller than a branch, that share a common origin in the recent past. So within hundreds of years. And so another way to think about this is this diagram here. And so we can see we're progressing from largest to smallest. And so there are 19 language families, and every language family has its own branches, and every branch has its own groups, and every group has its own language, and lastly, every language has a dialect. And so we'll continue to talk about this throughout the unit. So we are on the second key concept of your notes, so you should be writing under the heading that says, where are languages distributed? And so the largest language family is the Indo-European language family. And you're going to see graphics like this a lot in our language unit. Language families are shown on these trees. And so you can think branches, trees, they go together, right? And so I want to break down this graphic for you real quick. At the bottom of the tree, so the trunk, will always have the language family. And as you go up the tree, it is separated into its branches. So let's start with Indo-European, goes upwards, and it is separated into the Germanic, Romance, Balto-Slavic, and Indo-Iranian branches. So you can see those there. And the size of the branches indicate how many speakers of that branch there are in the world. And so you can see the Indo-Iranian branch is much, much larger than the Balto-Slavic, which means there are more speakers of Indo-Iranian than Balto-Slavic. So let's start again. It goes from family, Indo-European, up to branch. Let's do Germanic, and then to group. So the groups of the Germanic branch are North Germanic and West Germanic. And then it is classified by actual language. And so just like the branch sizes are indicative of how many speakers there are, it is the same thing with the size of the leaves. So you can see that English is found under the West Germanic group of the Germanic branch of the Indo-European family. Whew. Okay, so if you're overwhelmed, we'll continue looking at this. Don't worry about mastering it just now. But what we should talk about is the Indo-European family is the most widely used language family, and it is dispersed and diffused over pretty much the whole entire world. So some of these languages found in this family are Spanish, English, Hindi, Bengali, Portuguese, Russian, and German. And those are just some of the largest ones, but you can also see languages like Dutch, Italian, French, Haitian Creole, Slovak. So there are a ton more. Those are just kind of the largest ones that I chose to indicate here. And so you can see that the Indo-European language family is found almost everywhere in the world, but it is specifically found, you see here, in the Americas and Europe. We'll continue talking more about the Indo-European language family, but let's get in a few other ones. Sino-Tibetan is the second largest language family, and the most widely spoken language is Mandarin. So other languages in this family are Wu, Cantonese, and Thai, but again, you can also see there are some more here that I didn't indicate on the notes. Most of these languages are pretty small in comparison to Mandarin, and they are typically found in East Asia. So unlike our previous language family, Indo-European, that is distributed all over the world, Sino-Tibetan is really staying in one place here. And one reason for that is ideograms, which is what comprise the written portion of most of these Sino-Tibetan languages. And these are ideograms, and they're much different from what we think about in the English alphabet. There are several thousand of these ideograms that people need to learn when they're trying to learn this language, and so that is oftentimes a barrier to the diffusion of these Sino-Tibetan languages. Okay, so we're going to move on to discuss the third largest language family, the Niger-Congo language family. There are an estimated 350 to 400 million speakers of this language family. And some of the languages include Swahili, Zulu, Yoruba, and these are mostly spoken in southern Africa. Let me show you the map here. And what's important to know about the Niger-Congo family is that unlike the previous two, many of these languages are spoken by only a small part of each country's population in this indicated space here. And so as a result, there are much more, there's a lot more language diversity. However, not very many people are speakers of all of these languages. So you can see that these leaves are largely about the same size. Swahili is kind of the biggest one here, and it is a really important language for conducting trade and business in this portion of Africa. Okay, back from a pause. The last one that we're going to talk about in this video is Afro-Asiatic. There are about 350 million speakers of this language family, and you can see here on the graphic the family splits into 4 different branches, and some of the most important languages that you need to know about in this language family are Arabic and Hebrew. So remember that the Quran is written in Arabic, and the Judeo-Christian Bible was written in Hebrew. And now in the Jewish faith, the Torah is actually written in Hebrew as well. So these languages enjoy a type of prominence throughout the world because of their religious ties. But there are other languages in this family, and they're mostly spoken in Southwest Asia and Northern Africa. Okay, so the very last section, which there's a typo here, what are the major languages of the world, section 3. You can see on this pie chart how the language families are distributed across the world, so by the percentage of speakers. So about half of the world speaks an Indo-European language, and you can see that there are other language families that we didn't discuss specifically in this video that also have a significant amount of people speaking them. So here are the world's top languages. Actually, Mandarin is the most spoken language in the world. Hindi comes next, then Spanish, and then English. So a lot of